What's up, y'all? Today is the 15th of February, 2026. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of InTheImageClothingCompany Poodles, and this is Dante. Oh, Dante dog. My standard poodle. Yeah. This is InTheImageClothingCompany Poodles, one of the Fords to In the Image Clothing Company, and we're just tucked down in here. Out of the wind is the point. There's these mounds of dirt in this construction area. And what we do on In the Image Clothing Company Poodles is we let dogs stay natural, okay? The same thing as allowing the body to work on the main side of In the Image Clothing Company for us human beings. There's a lot that comes with it, but this video's title, okay, for the sake of this video, is abusing dogs. Because let's talk about what it really means to abuse dogs and what it maybe doesn't mean to abuse dogs that people might classify as abuse to dogs. Well, first off, we have to remember that dogs are domesticated animals. And so anytime we're ever talking about abuse or mistreatment or wrongdoing toward an animal, we need to remember that these animals would never possibly be able to be abused by a human being if we didn't first domesticate wild animals. And then you can say right there already that that's abuse. Maybe, possibly, right? Is that going too far to take an animal and put it under human beings' ownership? How do we get to own an animal to begin with? Animals, dogs, okay, coyotes, wolves, foxes, African painted dogs, any kind of wild dog just has free reign over wherever it is. It can go anywhere that it wants. It can live the lifestyle that it wants and do basically whatever it wants ever within its dog pack, okay? And bringing dogs into a house already is just not letting the dog have its natural, normal life that it would just be living otherwise. And then we have these dogs on unnaturally slippery, flat flooring. I've announced In the Image Clothing Company Poodles since at least May of 2025, and it's February 15th, 2026. So it's been some time, okay? Close to a year, really, at this point, that I've been documenting and date marking the reason we will have poodles and In the Image Clothing Company Poodles under what I call the gift of video, okay? On In the Image Clothing Company podcast, another one of our forwards where we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ. On the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, I've discussed In the Image Clothing Company Poodles for quite some time. On In the Image Clothing Company Music, even, I've discussed In the Image Clothing Company Poodles for quite some time under the gift of video, date marked and documented, posted publicly on the internet. So I adopted Dante from the South Utah Valley Animal Shelter in December of 2025. It's only been a little over 2 months, give or take, that I've even had Dante, okay? He's a rescue, and a true rescue that needed a lot of help. Now, what does it really mean to abuse dogs? Because I will be owning dogs for the rest of my life. I am the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, and I phrase it like that, but it also means the leader of In the Image Clothing Company for my entire lifetime. And we'll be doing a lot with breeding purebred standard poodles and hosting things like poodle parade events. You can bring your poodles, purebred of any size or mixed poodles of any size. We'll get people into nature and dogs into nature. Do things for the environment where we do, okay, clean the creek or rid the rubbish specific subcategory of poodle parade events and similar things like this. And I've been announcing these things for many, many, many months before today's date, okay? Posted publicly on the internet under the gift of video. And I physically discipline Dante, and I will continue to physically discipline my dogs as time goes on. You know, if they do something wrong, meaning potentially harmful or dangerous to them, that I'm trying to train them to not do, being just a wild animal to begin with, dogs, but being domesticated and taken under human care, as we say, but really human control. These dogs don't know what garbage cans are when they're just natural dogs in the wild. These dogs don't know what cars are and road systems when they're just natural dogs in the wild. These dogs don't know what man-made poisons are. The way that, you know, domesticated dogs can deal with these things natural wild dogs never could. There's many other things like this that are deadly, like a one and done kind of deadly to the dog. Your dog licks up poison off the ground, like anything, any kind of liquid substance like oil or antifreeze in a vehicle or for a vehicle that could be spilled onto the ground, any kind of cleaning product or cleaning agent, if you will, you know, chemicals of any type that are man-made, wild dogs would never have the possibility to get into. And if these domesticated animals lick these things one time, it can immediately kill them. And sometimes there's nothing you can do, even if you catch it and take your dog immediately to a veterinarian clinic, an animal doctor. Sometimes there's still nothing that can be done depending on what your dog gets into to eat or just lick or drink off the ground, take out of a garbage can. If the dog steps into the road, one car hits your dog and your dog is dead. So, how do we train our dogs? And where is it okay to hit your dog? Where is it okay to put your dog into a crate? Where is it okay to squirt your dog with a squirt bottle of water? Where is it okay to yell at your dog? Is that too far? You know, and we can talk about what really classifies abuse, but what I really want to do in this video is just discuss a lot of things that are potentially called abuse to dogs to some, and other people wouldn't even bat an eye at it, thinking that it's even a problem at all. Because we're all individual human beings, just as every dog is an individual, and we all raise our dogs differently, and we wouldn't be doing it at all if we didn't first domesticate dogs. So, dogs, like the breed of a standard poodle here, wouldn't even exist unless we unnaturally selected the dogs we wanted to be bred together, like a female dog and a male dog, to have a litter of puppies, and then over generation and generation and generation of doing that, we select the dogs we want as human beings to, you could kind of say create, but we're just really selecting. We're not creating anything. We're just unnaturally causing something to happen. And then, yes, a breed comes. So the breed of a poodle doesn't actually exist naturally. There's no such thing as a poodle until human beings selected dogs to become a poodle. There's no such thing as really any dog that's a domesticated breed besides just what the wild dogs would have been, until human beings do that. And so, is that abuse to begin with? You know, we've got a lot of dog breeds that are specifically chosen and bred to be what people think as cute. And we've got these really squished-faced, squished-nosed dogs, like pugs and, you know, English bulldogs and French bulldogs. There's different types of each type of breed where there is. With a lot of different breeds. These dogs are bred to have these really squished up faces because the breeders think they're cute. And these dogs can't even breathe well at all. They have all these respiratory and sinus problems, physical health complications, and a lot of surgical intervention has to be had for these dogs to even be able to just breathe normally because of what we've done as human beings to select the dogs we want to look a certain way. And it's very, very detrimental to their health, okay? They're just struggling to even breathe. And I would classify that as abuse. If we're just, giving any kind of opinion or, having a side to things. I don't like to take sides to anything in life. I just don't really take sides to things. I try to always get down to the truth of what's really going on. And there's a lot of dogs that are bred to have really short little stubby legs, and they can't even walk naturally. Corgis, that's a breed of dogs that are bred to have these very, very short, unnaturally stubby, small little legs. And they've got this big, long, tubular, well, compared to their leg size, big, long, tubular body, these short little legs. And they can't even walk normally. They can't even jump onto a couch or, up like a 2-foot ledge. Sometimes dogs can't even jump that high because of their breeding that human beings have chosen to do for the dog, and the dog has no say in it. So there's a lot of things like this happening in breeding of dogs that is abusive, truly. It's doing something entirely against the dog's will before the dog's even born, okay? That negatively impacts the dog's health for their entire life. Now, there's a lot going on in dogs because there truly is no such thing as what we think of as a dog until we domesticate them. Wild animals, they're not really dogs. The word dog is more to be used to describe a domesticated canine. The technical term for this thing here, a dog, okay? But there's a lot of people out there who have dogs and they don't even know why, really. And their dogs will just be sitting on a chain connected to something in a yard out there in no matter what weather, no matter what season, if it's freezing cold in the winter and it's snowing, if it's really just cold rain, if it's, dry but really cold, if it's excessively hot and the dog's just out there basically baking in the sun, just on the end of a leash somewhere in a yard. And maybe people don't even know the dog's there besides the owner. And there's a lot of dogs out there that just get fed way, way, way too little, and they're just extremely starving all the time. And they don't have the opportunity like a wild dog would to go make a kill of an animal and eat natural, healthy, mineral-rich and vitamin-rich, nutrient-dense meat from a wild animal that they've killed to eat because they're inside of a human being's yard, inside of a human being's house, tied up to a man-made or human being-made chain or rope where they can't go anywhere else to do anything for their own sake, okay? And that's abusive, entirely undisputed abuse when you're just taking all of your dog's decisions away from them in a way that doesn't even really make any sense to do, okay? Good boy, Dante. You're good. There's a lot of things going on with dogs. There's a lot of food we have nowadays, and we discuss this on the main side of In The Image Clothing Company when we just discuss eating naturally. The goal is natural on all 4 sides of In The Image Clothing Company. The slogan on In The Image Clothing Company Poodles here is letting dogs stay natural. Because dogs are always natural until they're domesticated, okay? And we have a lot of food that's synthetic, unnatural, artificial, okay? Colors, dyes, preservatives, flavorings in foods. And these things aren't even okay for us as human beings to eat. They're actually extremely poisonous, literally. These things are unnaturally made by us human beings, and it gets called people food. That's what I'm saying is, ironically, it's not even okay for the human being or the people to eat. It's literally poison and toxification to our bodies. And there's a lot of dogs out there that are getting fed only that. Just people food, scraps from food. And they don't have the natural nutrients that they would in the wild. They don't have the ability to use their jaw muscles the way that dogs do in the wild, to rip flesh off animals and really use their body the way it's designed by God to be used. I mean, this is the thing, is we are centered around the gospel of Jesus Christ under In the Image Clothing Company. It's in our name. In the image of Jesus Christ. In the image of God, we are designed, so we're a clothing company for anything that clothes the human being. Also the dogs, collars, leashes, and harnesses, slip leads, bandanas, anything that it is placed onto a dog is clothing the dog with something the way that God clothes the fields with grass. So, we discuss clothing staying centered and fitting correct and being made from 100% natural materials in all the ways we can to allow the body to work. On In the Image Clothing Company's main side, same thing with letting dogs stay natural on In the Image Clothing Company poodles here. A lot of it is what we place onto our dogs, because in the wild, a natural dog, a wolf, coyote, a fox, any dog, which, by the way, there are many less dog breeds wild nowadays than there were before human beings got involved. And a lot of wild dog breeds have gone extinct, or a lot of wild canine breeds, if you will, have gone extinct because we have domesticated dogs, taken away their natural instincts, and then all the wild dogs that were there aren't quite the same as they were before human beings got involved. A lot of their natural habitats have been entirely destroyed. A lot of their populations have been entirely dwindled to extinction because of human beings' doings. So what does it really mean to abuse a dog? Because I will continue to hit my dogs for the rest of my life out of disciplinary action, corrective action toward behaviors they do that could potentially harm them, living in a modern man-made world placed onto God's natural earth when they don't know any better until we tell them as their owners. Like getting in the roads when dogs don't understand how the public road system works in here, the United States of America, for example. Or getting into poisonous things that don't exist in nature until human beings conjure up and develop cleaning agents and lubricators, right? Oils and synthetic materials and these things that don't exist until human beings get involved, on natural things, right? With the goal being natural on all four sides of In the Image Clothing Company, and has been since the founding. Yeah, so I have no problem giving my dogs a pretty firm hit when they are doing something that they need to be taught is dangerous to them, because just like us as human beings have hard lessons in life and we get hurt, and pain teaches us things, it's the same with the dogs. If we're not supposed to touch something that is very hot, like a stovetop, you touch it and it hurts. And because of that, you learn to not touch it again. If our dogs, being just domesticated animals that do not know better in a modern man-made world because they're just a natural creature until we unnaturally select dogs to breed them to be domesticated animals, they just don't know what's going to hurt them in this modern man-made world. And so if they do something that is potentially very dangerous to them, and I give my dog a very firm, solid smack or hit, it's like me touching a stovetop and I get a very firm, solid, if you will, feeling of pain from being burned from something that can hurt me. And then I learn to not touch the stovetop again, okay? That's how I will continue to raise my dogs for the rest of my life and train my dogs for the rest of my life. Being the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, advocating for being good owners of dogs, I will be advocating for disciplining dogs properly. And often I will be hitting my dogs if they are often doing things that can harm them. But the more that I'm very diligent with my dogs to train them to not do things that will harm them, the less they will do things that will harm them that they've been taught not to do. So, just to be clear and transparent, I will be hitting my dogs, not overly hard, not excessively hard, not to cause permanent physical damage, but to really teach them for their safety, because they're in a place they would never be if it weren't for us human beings. In the wild, there's no cars. In the wild, there's no man-made poisons. In the wild, there's no unhappy neighbors who often kill dogs if they go onto their property, because a lot of people just don't like dogs at all. And so they'll use man-made weaponry or whatever it is to kill dogs if your dog goes on their property. Okay. There's a lot that comes with this, and as I say, context, context, context. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Context Over Content. The point of these videos under In the Image Clothing Company, and always doing so much under the gift of video, as we have and always will continue to do under all four sides of In the Image Clothing Company, is to give context, to realize there's a lot going on in life and we will never know all of it. And you can call things abuse that are not abusive. But if you don't know why they're happening or what's going on to cause them to be the case, then you can have a problem with it. And that's your choice. But if you think that you need to have a problem with somebody hitting their dog out of corrective disciplinary action, then you probably should, really, aligning with those views, have a problem with dogs ever being domesticated. But usually it's dog lovers and dog owners who have a problem with the ways that other human beings who are also dog lovers and dog owners are raising their dogs, okay? Because they think they know better. Now, there is a lot going on with feeding, and there is a lot in dogs that could be classified as abuse in any kind of way possible. A lot of dogs are bred for very specific reasons, and a lot of dogs will be bred just specifically for one thing, specifically for their hair coat, like show dogs. And so most all of the focus in the breeding process for certain dogs goes into just having good hair grow from the dog. There's certain dogs that are bred for just very specific things, and everything else, health-wise, is kind of secondary. And so often dogs are specifically being chosen to be bred to be something that the human being breeder wants from the dog, and the dog is caused what comes in the dog is just terrible health problems. Okay. So many people love mixed breed dogs, and mixed breed dogs are in almost every case more unhealthy than purebred dogs. In the wild, it's very rare for a dog to be a mixed breed dog. You'd have to have something like a wolf and a coyote coming together and having offspring. Wolves have offspring with wolves, and coyotes have offspring with coyotes. Foxes have offspring with foxes. Wild dogs stay within their gene pool, if you will, meaning within their breed, okay? Domesticated dogs we get mixed dog breeds all the time, and people love them, but they're almost always unhealthy. You can have relatively healthy mixed dogs where you can, but we just have to see what's going on, because when we're taking away these dogs' choices before they're even born and setting them up for an unsuccessful and a hard and a physically damaged life through us improperly, unnaturally selecting dogs to breed together, that creates an unhealthy dog from birth in ways that wouldn't really happen the same way, couldn't really possibly happen quite the same way in the wild, that's abuse before the dog's even born. And we're doing it out of selfish reasons. Those of us that do, those people that do, I'm not part of that, okay, just to be clear. When people breed mixed dogs, or when people breed dogs specifically for one thing and just neglect the health of the dog as something they don't even think about within the breeding process. In the wild, we have what's called survival of the fittest. And dogs will only survive if they can. It's harsh in the wild for dogs where it is. And if they're not strong enough and healthy enough to chase after a wild animal to kill it and eat, they'll starve to death. Because of that, the dogs that live are healthier than the dogs that die. That's just how it works, because you have to be healthy enough to continue to live when you're on your own as a wild dog. And that actually strengthens the breed of the wild dogs as time goes on. The fittest dogs are the dogs that have the offspring because they're the ones that survive, and then the dog gets actually healthier over time through the breeding and through just generations of dogs. Survival of the fittest, survival of the healthiest, if you will, survival of the strongest, if you will, survival of the dogs that are going to be the most proper physicality-wise, functionality-wise, and health-wise. In our man-made modern 2026, for example, and just going forth, it's only going to get more unnatural. We domesticate dogs, and we select dogs unnaturally instead of in the wild it being naturally selected, and we put a male and a female dog together to have offspring, and we do it out of selfish reasons because we want the dog to look a certain way. We want the dog to be sized a certain way. We want the dog to have certain characteristics visually or temperament-wise that don't really align with anything for the dog's benefit in a lot of cases. Not only that, but it's actually very, very, very damaging and detrimental to the entire livelihood of the dog in any and every way that it is in any given case. So, what does it mean to abuse a dog? That's why I titled this the way that I did, Abusing Dogs, because that's what we're doing as owners of dogs if we're not doing all we can to learn what it means to, quote, let dogs stay natural, unquote. Letting dogs stay natural is our slogan here on In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, and has been for close to a year. Okay, right around at least 7 months before I ever adopted my first dog, which is Dante here, who is a rescue. Now, in the wild, there'd be no such thing as needing to rescue a dog. We rescue animals as human beings from other human beings. That's why animals end up in shelters. Animal shelters wouldn't need to exist if we didn't have dogs or any animals, but for the sake of dogs here, under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, In the Image Clothing Company's Dog Fourth, we specialize in purebred standard poodles, but we give information on letting dogs stay natural that applies to all dogs across the earth, and a lot of animals as well that our information would apply to, under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles. Letting animals stay natural really is the focus, with the goal being natural on all four sides of In the Image Clothing Company, and it's been this way for close to a year as of today's date, the 15th of February 2026. And I've had people in the past few days get really up in arms about me hitting my dog out of disciplinary action for things that are harmful to him, to teach him to not do things that can harm him, because he lives in a place that is not natural at all, okay, this modern man-made world. And I have the obligation as his legal guardian, the owner of Dante in this case, but then any dogs going forth, because we will have many under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles. I personally, Evan Strong, will have many poodles throughout my life. I will discipline my dogs physically by hitting them, to teach them lessons and keep them away from things that would harm them way more than me hitting them ever possibly could. Okay, so there's a lot of things in life that are happening to dogs because they're not in a natural environment, and it's abusive. A lot of dogs just about never go outside under human beings' care, okay, domesticated dogs. And just like us human beings, and I wear barefoot shoes. These are the Zero Shoes branded Denver canvas black shoes. Barefoot shoes, very thin, minimal shoes on the bottom, because our feet have a lot of dexterity to them, just like our hands. And dogs' feet need to be able to move and accommodate for all the natural texture to the earth, like all the rocks here and all the dirt here. And if they can't do that, and if their feet can't stabilize with all the grip and texture to the ground of the natural earth, dogs very, very commonly develop arthritis and a lot of joint problems, and permanent in cases and irreversible in cases, damage to their body from being forced to be in human beings' houses on slippery, flat, unnatural tile and wood, concrete flooring. Things like this, where there's no texture and there's no grip to the dog's feet, and that's abusive. Abusing dogs comes through that. But maybe you never hit your dog. Maybe you think that that's okay and justifiable because you don't do something else that you don't think is okay or justifiable. And a lot of dogs also are just being fed so much. Way too much. In the wild, dogs have to be healthy enough and fit enough to eat, or they will die. So, when dogs run and chase after an animal and kill it to eat it, it's almost a reward for their work and their hard effort they've physically put in to exercise, if you will, their body, just to keep their body working is the point, okay? Allowing the body to work, if you will, in the Image Clothing Company's main side slogan for us human beings specifically. The body is just meant to work. Dogs are meant to chase after animals, make a kill, and eat it. And it's kind of two things in one. They're getting their just natural exercise, the natural amount that they would need, and getting the natural, healthy, nutrition-filled meal at the same time because of the natural amount of exercise they had to put in to kill the animal to then eat it. Now, domesticated dogs are just fed as much as whatever individual owner is feeding their dog. And it's almost let's not say almost every case, but in the vast majority of cases of domesticated dogs, they are being so overfed, it's to the point of obesity to where they have a hard time breathing. They're so fat that it puts a lot of strain on their joints, from their feet up to their shoulders, through their whole spine, out to the end of their tail, from the tip of their nose to the tip of their tail, if you will. They're so obese in most, seriously, truly, statistically, most cases of domesticated dogs in modern 2026. Yeah, the obesity is so bad that the dog's joints are being worn out, and then compounding that with some dogs that never even get to be on the only ground they'd ever naturally be on, which is just rocks and dirt and nature outside, because a lot of owners have their dogs spend most all their time, or almost completely all of their time, inside of a house on flooring that their dogs can't even stabilize their own body on. And so you compound the obesity caused by the human beings overfeeding to the domesticated dog with them placing that overweight, obese dog onto a slippery floor that the dog can't even stabilize their own body on. And you've got a lot of physical health problems coming from human beings, and I would personally classify this as abuse. These are some of the big reasons I personally have founded In the Image Clothing Company for human beings And then In the Image Clothing Company Poodles followed after as the last fourth that I added to In the Image Clothing Company as the founder, me, Evan Strong, in this For Life to Lead It. These are some of the main reasons In the Image Clothing Company Poodles exists, is to give information on things like this that we just don't know if we don't know. Dante, my standard poodle here, can't sit on tile or hardwood flooring because he slides. There's no texture, not enough texture to the flooring for Dante to sit, being just this dog, the standard poodle, without him just sliding down into a laying down position because the floor is so slippery. And where his feet are on the ground, don't stop there. As we say under the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, the hand is the shoulder, and they do the exact same thing when locked out of the elbow between the two. The foot is the hip, and they do the exact same thing when locked out at the knee between the two. The dog's feet are their shoulders, and the dog's feet are their hips. So hip dysplasia. These are problems where the hips in dogs get displaced or come out of their sockets or just get a lot of scar tissue and arthritis, if you will, built up in the joints of the dog's hips and the dog's shoulders, the dog's elbows, the dog's wrists, and throughout the dog's body, in their spine, and wherever it is in the dog that it can and does happen. A lot of this is just solely because of dogs being on slippery, flat flooring, and their joints just can't possibly work naturally on slippery, flat flooring. Neither can ours as human beings, and I've been discussing this since the very founding of In the Image Clothing Company around 16 months ago from today's date, the 15th of February, 2026. So these are abusive things to dogs that are going without notice, without a care for most all human beings, without most all human beings thinking there's any need to correct this. But this is damaging and permanently detrimental to your dog's health until or unless addressed or fixed in ways if it's able to be had, but sometimes it's past that point. So me hitting dogs, or anyone hitting dogs out of disciplinary action for their own safety, isn't abuse when seen with the reasons why we're doing it. If we love our dogs and we're doing it for their best interest, and it actually is benefiting them, and it's not just us thinking it's their best interest that we have in mind, right? For their benefit that we have in mind, it truly is beneficial when you can see that the dog has been trained, because that's what pain is in the body. The reason why we feel pain is for us to be trained, essentially. Our bodies feel pain to tell us that something is dangerous, that something is wrong, that there is something there we need to stop or stay away from. That's what I am doing with my dogs and will continue to do for the rest of my life as an owner of a dog who otherwise wouldn't have an owner. I need to train my dog to be safe in an environment that is extremely and completely unnatural for them to be in, that they don't understand unless I teach them what it is. And Dante doing something potentially harmful to him, and me intervening and stopping it and hitting him, very clearly explaining to him and having him be aware of why I hit him, teaches him through the pain that's caused by me hitting him that this is not an okay thing to do. This is dangerous for you. Just as if I go jump off of a ledge that's higher than I can safely jump off of a ledge and feel pain in my feet and traveling up my legs, that pain may be unwanted by me, is my body telling me this is not a safe thing to do. Refrain from doing this or you will be permanently damaged potentially. That's what we do when we hit our dogs out of disciplinary action, is we're doing it to actually better their lives. It's no opinion, it's no dispute, it's no justifiable reason. It's the reason. And it shows because Dante is now trained to do things or to not do things that he otherwise was doing before I disciplined him because doing these things, now he knows better for his safety. He's more fulfilled and he's a more obedient dog. Okay? The same is the case for any dog under my ownership. Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, in this case, is one of our fourths under In the Image Clothing Company. But any dog owner out there who does discipline their dogs physically, as long as they're doing it rightfully, in the proper times, and not stepping too far and permanently damaging their dog by their behavior, then that's not abuse. Okay? But what is abuse is a lot of things that a lot of people love. Like feeding your dog treats all day, every day, just about, because you love your dog so much, you cause health problems in your dog. You cause your dog to be obese and have a hard time breathing and walking and sleeping. You cause problems in your dog's liver and digestive tract because you love your dog so much that you're feeding them things that are damaging them. That's abuse. If I were to say, this is not one side versus the other, but this is truth. Is there's no reason to keep feeding your dog unnatural things or just overly feeding your dogs things because you claim you love them, and that's the reason. People say food is love with human beings or with animals, but to the point of health problems, no. Food is damaging in excessive quantities. Okay, we discuss eating naturally as one of the things under both In the Image Clothing Company's main side with allowing the body to work for human beings, and In the Image Clothing Company Poodles with letting dogs stay natural for any dogs across the planet. We discuss eating, sleeping, standing, walking, sitting, breathing, hydration, everything we do as beings, as creations of God, human beings or the dogs, under In the Image Clothing Company. Doing these things naturally is the goal. And naturally, in a wild dog pack, just by the way, there's a hierarchy. And if a dog isn't the alpha dog, which is the leader dog, it might get nipped at or just fully bit and driven out from the pack, not given food. If the dog pack has gone together to make a kill to eat, the dogs in that pack get to decide which dog gets which amount of food, and maybe no food goes to certain dogs. And is that abuse within this family dynamic of the dog pack, not giving one of their siblings or children a meal for whatever reason they decide that, right? And dogs go as far as killing each other often in the wild. You know, they'll eat each other if it comes to it. Is that abuse? We've got to see what's really going on, because me hitting my dog with my own hand out of disciplinary action for their own safety is not abuse when you realize that it's a dog. And dogs are being pampered in modern day to the point that they have lost all of their natural instincts. Well, let's not be blanket statement with it, but just about all of their natural instincts have gone away in a lot of the cases in modern domesticated dogs, because dogs are being so pampered, and owners of these dogs think that they're treating their dogs so well when their dog doesn't even know what it means to be a dog anymore, and it couldn't possibly survive on its own. The truth is, most every modern dog breed that's been made by mankind, okay, not really made, but unnaturally selected by us human beings to breed dogs to what we want out of selfish reasons, by the way, which could be classified as abuse, okay? These dogs, in almost every case, can not or could not possibly survive on their own. If you take a modern domesticated dog and you put it into the wild, it will almost certainly die. It doesn't know how to hunt for itself. It doesn't know where to go find a water source for itself, so it doesn't dehydrate and die from that. Dogs will almost certainly die in just about every single case if they are domesticated and you place them into the wild. So, is that abuse? To just unnaturally alter the natural order of things to the degree that dogs couldn't even possibly survive without us as the owners? And then if so, then who is it, as us, being human beings, the owners of the dogs, that really gets to decide how each and every dog across the entire planet gets to be treated? Otherwise, it's abusive. Because treating dogs any certain way or not as the owner of them is already something that's unnatural and could be classified as abuse. When these dogs are not free-reigning the mountains and the deserts and the plains and wherever it is that they would naturally be, we've done things against their will before their birth by breeding them the ways we want, often out of only selfish reasons as human beings. So, what really is abusing dogs? What really is classified as abuse to dogs? What does it really mean to let dogs stay natural, at least the way we approach that under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles here? Me, Evan Strong, being the founder, I'm the one that's delivering this information. I'm the one that is leading In the Image Clothing Company for my entire lifetime. Here's some context as of the 15th of February, 2026. On some of the things that are going on. Now, dogs have so many surgical procedures that happen in modern 2026 and going forth. It's only going to get worse and more unnatural. Dogs are being given, out of what human beings claim as love, toys to chew on that are entirely synthetic. Oil is what's used to make things like poly blends, polyester, polyurethane, plastics. These are from oil. These are processed in factories and they are toxic and poisonous in most cases of these materials. Unnatural, synthetic, artificial. These are things that are already never even possible to come across because they aren't natural. Until human beings make these things through unnatural processes, they don't even exist. And these things get made into what we label as toys for dogs or treats for dogs. And we are poisoning our dogs. And isn't that abuse? And dogs will chew off parts of these toys. Little pieces will be swallowed into the dogs, and it's poisoning the dog as it passes through their digestive system. But often they swallow pieces of these toys that are too large to pass through their digestive system. And they have to have surgeries to have these things removed, or the dog dies from a blockage in their digestive system, in their intestines, in their stomach, or just in their airway. They choke to death and die from it. Yeah, it's ridiculous, okay? What's really ridiculous is the accusations that come from human beings who have such a problem with owners of dogs, physically disciplining their dogs for their own safety and benefit. Yet, there's a lot of hypocrisy in this, with human beings doing so many damaging things that are actually damaging, because hitting my dog is not damaging my dog. As long as I don't step too far and permanently hurt my dog physically, hitting my dog is only beneficial out of corrective behavior for things that are potentially damaging to them. Yet, human beings who have a problem with other human beings hitting their dogs out of disciplinary action will be permanently damaging their own dogs through a lot of these other ways. And they just don't understand what's really happening, the actual truth of what is going on. So, there's a lot that we can say with this, and there's a lot that I have said with this. Date marked, documented, posted publicly under what I call the gift of video. Under In the Image Clothing Company podcast, there are many episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast about dogs, specifically, about In the Image Clothing Company poodles, specifically. And on each of the other 3 sides, including this one here, in the Image Clothing Company poodles, even before I ever had my own first dog, which is Dante here, the standard poodle, the rescue from the South Utah Valley Animal Shelter back in December of 2025, I have many videos documented and date marked discussing the reasons why we have In the Image Clothing Company poodles to begin with. So, abusing dogs, it comes through a lot of different avenues and ways, and those that claim they're loving their dogs and are such good owners of dogs are actually in many ways doing things that would be undisputedly, when seen the truth, classified as abuse. Yeah. When we see the truth of these things, we understand what's going on, if you're willing to. Things like synthetic materials we use to wash and clean our dogs is actually poisoning the dog through their skin. We discuss the epidermis. Under In the Image Clothing Company's main side, that's a video's title. The epidermis, it's the skin of the human being. The skin of animals has holes in it called pores, where perspiration or sweat comes out. Things also go into the body of the animal or human being, and we can poison ourselves from the outside in or from the inside out with something placed onto our bodies, the way we can place a topical cream onto our bodies and it soaks into our bodies with the intent to heal our bodies from the inside out. Dogs with unnatural collar material placed onto them, unnatural shampoos and conditioners and things into the coat of their hair or fur, depending on the breed. Poodles have hair, for example. Other dogs have fur. Hair continually grows in most all cases of dogs with hair, if not all cases. I just don't know for sure as of right now. But we wash these dogs in ways that is very unnatural. We put things into the dog's hair to have it stay in there that is irritating their skin because we want our dogs to have hair that looks or smells or feels a certain way according to what we want selfishly as the owner of these dogs. This is something that could most certainly be classified as abuse. But these things are going unnoticed, yet these things are almost permanently always happening. When things that get called abuse unjustly, like hitting your dog out of disciplinary action for their own safety, are not permanent things and are not actually damaging the dog. So there just needs to be a lot of understanding before you can even rightfully speak on something. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled "You Don't Know What You're Talking About." What I really said in there was, if you don't know what you're talking about, it's going to be better for you to not speak on something. Same is the case for me, Evan Strong, and any human ever to live, because if we don't know what we're saying and we don't really know what's actually happening, we can have opinions on things and we can have views on things and think things are so bad when we're just a misunderstanding of what's actually going on. So there are a lot of very, very specific, very, very valid, very, very universal, and universal is either universal or not. So yes, universal reasons as to why I have founded In the Image Clothing Company and In the Image Clothing Company poodles specifically with letting dogs stay natural. There are a lot of things that are entirely undisputed and universal because we have domesticated wild animals that we call dogs, and they have no say to eat unless we tell them they can. So they're either being overfed or underfed if we're not doing what we can to feed them the proper amount for the specific dog's size and the specific dog's activity level, the specific dog's metabolism, depending on the breed, which again, we basically determine as the breeders of these dogs. Okay. Dogs have no ability to go outside where they would always and only ever be unless domesticated by human beings. But unless these domesticated dogs get let outside by their owners, they cannot go outside to even get sun to shine on their bodies, which they would always have anytime the sun was out in nature. Okay, just being a natural dog, they'd always be in nature. That's where the wording comes from. On the natural earth. Okay. There's a lot that happens with dogs because dogs would never, and I'll say it a third time, never have anything placed onto them in the wild. We have dogs that have collars, leashes, harnesses, bandanas, slip leads, but then clothing for dogs, and all of these things. The reason I say clothing like that is because we take it to the extremes, making our dogs into what we want them to be as the owners of the dog, and that is abuse. Because it goes so far as to just altering the dog's entire physiology, their physical mechanics, as we say. The human body is just mechanics is a video under the main site of In The Image Clothing Company. We discuss the anatomy of the human body, we discuss the anatomy of the dog's bodies, and we let these things just be how they naturally were, designed by God, okay? As we say, the only end is to allow God's design of the human being to work, or let God's design of the dogs stay natural. Now, God's design of the dogs is already altered to the degree that it is, as we unnaturally select dogs to breed to what we want as human beings, but doing what we can to zero in on a healthy, purebred dog breed is a very high priority of something we have to do, because otherwise it would just happen by itself naturally. Dogs zeroing in through survival of the fittest or natural selection to create healthy dogs, or else they just don't survive. We create unhealthy dogs because of what we want selfishly as human beings through breeding. And then we place things onto our dogs, regardless if they are a healthy or an unhealthy dog to begin with. Things that are very heavy, often collars that are pulling down on the dog's neck, and dogs' spines are horizontal on Earth's vertical gravity pull. And as we place a collar onto the dog's neck, it's pulling down on the dog's neck. So, under In The Image Clothing Company, we will always have, once we start producing and providing for the ability for you to purchase if you'd like, dog products. In addition to human being clothing, collars, leashes, harnesses, things like this, to not alter the dog, with the same focus and intent behind human being clothing that we've had since the very founding of In The Image Clothing Company on the founding date, the 23rd of September 2024. Minimal, light, simplistic, brandless on the exterior, just unaltering and letting the dog stay natural will be the focus for all of the products we ever put out under In The Image Clothing Company for dogs. And there's many dogs out there that are dealing with very heavy, just unnecessarily heavy collars placed onto their necks, and then jingling little things around their ears onto the collars, like dog tags or bells or things of this unnatural nature, if you will, causing the dog to have to always listen to this jingling or ringing or clanking of metal or whatever it is right next to their ears. I'd call that abuse, personally. I would. And I will never be placing things, unless specifically needed in very specific cases, around the neck of my dog that will be causing noise that they always have to just constantly be listening to any movement they personally make. So we have to realize we are abusing dogs the second we do anything that is unnatural to them. And that's not always wrong, to have things unnaturally done to dogs, because if it was, we couldn't possibly ever justify having domesticated dogs at all. But we're not going to stop the domestication of dogs at this point. That will not happen. I don't get to decide that, but the entire earth takes animals under their care where they do, as far as when it comes to human beings. Okay. And we breed animals according to what we want, where we do, when it comes to human beings. So, what we need to do is all we can to learn what it means to just have our dogs be able to live the best life they can, and learn what it really means for a dog to be natural before we create, if you will, develop, really, is what it actually is, as human beings, these unnatural environments and flooring and materials and lifestyles and all the things that come with domesticating an animal before we can talk about what it really means to be abusing dogs. Okay, we need to understand that that's what's happening in most every case of most every owner of a dog out there. Most owners of dogs get dogs because they're cute. And that is a most in modern day. Dogs used to be working dogs and they had a solid purpose. Most dogs in modern 2026 don't have an actual purpose other than the human being who owns them wants the dog and tells the dog what to do and how to do it according to what the human being wants. And that's abuse. Truly, it is. Okay, that's just controlling this life form, this creature of God. This is God's design. This is God's creature. This, as I am, is just something that would not be here if something didn't create it. And you don't have to believe in God, but he is there regardless. Okay, there's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled "You Do Not Need to Believe in God." It's a conjunction. You don't need to believe in God is the actual title. But if we have collars on our dogs that are heavy, it's just weight pulling down on the dog that would never possibly be like that in nature. Dogs are always only nature or natural until human beings get involved. If we have imbalances then in these collars that we make as mankind or human beings and place onto our dogs, now your dog has its entire spine being pulled on imbalanced from its neck where the collar is placed to the tip of its nose from there and the tip of its tail and all 4 of its feet, toes or nails if you will, claws. The whole dog's body is being altered mechanically, physically, if it has an imbalanced collar placed onto it that you have done as the owner of it against the dog's will, and I would classify that personally as abuse. So, leashes and anything else placed onto a dog, these things would never be placed onto the dog if we didn't do it as human beings. So if we don't have it being our utmost priority to try to keep our dogs as unaltered physically through anything we place on them as the owners of these domesticated animals as we can, then we're choosing entirely against the dog's will to put something onto them that is physically altering their body's natural workings, and they can never possibly have a say over it when we buckle it around their neck or when we tie it around their neck in a way they can't get off on their own. These are things that are abuse. Abusing dogs, it's happening no matter what, if they're domesticated to begin with. We're taking away their choices. Everything on this earth is always just free until human beings get involved. Us changing the natural order of things is us abusing God's design of this planet. We're given dominion over this planet as human beings, over the animals, over the plants, over the whole earth. And if we don't do everything we can to do everything we can, and we will always, all of us, myself included, be imperfect. And it's not about trying to be perfect. We're not trying to be a perfect owner of a dog. We are trying to do all that we can, if we're going to be good owners of dogs, to give our dogs just a good, healthy, natural life. To the best of what we can, starting with maybe a dog that's already a mixed breed dog. Starting with a dog that might be a rescue. And already becoming with health complications because of maybe another human being's decisions. Man, we just have to do all we can. Just knowing that we are abusing dogs. We will never not be abusing dogs unless we stop domesticating dogs. But you can see the difference. It's not a prestige. You can see it health-wise. With a very properly selected, purebred dog, in the case of a standard poodle, for example, they're generally very healthy dogs. And you can see that. You can watch the way they stand and walk. Part of that's just the shape of the breed of the poodle, the actual anatomy, just because of the individual breed, but I call it poodle posture. You can watch purebred poodles, and they can stand well, and they can move well, and they've got good ability to just turn their neck and their spine. They can groom themselves where they need to with their tongue. They have natural mobility, as do a lot of other dogs that are properly bred to do all that we can to keep the dogs healthy, even though we are unnaturally selecting dogs to breed them to what we want as human beings, being these domesticated animals. But you can watch a lot of dog breeds that are very, very selfishly bred for what human beings want, and they can't even breathe properly. They can't have enough mobility to even lick themselves clean in the places they need to be licking themselves clean that would naturally happen in any wild natural dog breed or canine breed, okay, if you will. Yeah. Dogs that are bred to be so small that they can fit into a purse or fit into your bed with you or onto your lap. Dogs in nature have to be physically large enough, physically capable enough to make a kill of another animal to eat, to even survive. We unnaturally breed dogs down in size to create these very small, not create, but select unnaturally a male and female dog over generation and generation to create, but it's God's creation that we are altering, is why I get caught up, if you will, on the word create. We don't actually create things as human beings. Matter cannot be created or destroyed. It's a universal law, and we can just alter the natural order of these natural laws, God's laws, Jesus Christ, the creator of the earth and heaven and all things that are in them, okay, including us as his children. We breed dogs as human beings, those that do, down to be so small they can't even naturally navigate an environment that is just earth. They can't get up and over natural textured earth because we have toy or teacup-sized dogs, and a lot of health complications come from this. And so these are things done against the dog's will before they're even born, and that is abuse. Hey, bud. Okay, so, good boy. Yeah. There's a lot happening that could never possibly happen unless we stepped in as human beings. Two dogs, this is happening. It's unnatural, it's damaging, and is certainly classifiable as abuse. And so before you go and start getting after human beings and trying to get human beings' dogs removed from their ownership and care because they're physically disciplining their dogs and you don't like it and you'd call it abuse, maybe take a look at your own life and your own dogs and your own relationship with your own dogs and your own education about what it means to actually own an animal and take care of it, and what it really means for a dog to be healthy, not what people want it to be or think it should be, and what it really means for a dog to be clean and not poisoned by chemicals that we use to clean our dogs, what it really means for your dog's nails to be at a natural length and not abusing your dog by taking away their natural strength and support by cutting their nails too short, as so many human beings do for their own fingernails and toenails. Learn what it really means for a dog to be natural to the degree that you can, and let's do all that we can in our imperfect natures as human beings to just try well to have our dogs have as natural and healthy of a life as we can, while knowing we'll never be perfect at that. And there's always things we can improve or tweak, or things that we think are good that are not, and all this and blah, blah, blah. Man, and I'm the one that's worked up about it. I am. That's why I founded In The Image Clothing Company, and that's why we have In The Image Clothing Company poodles. Because I'm frustrated that people think they know what's better for the dog than God does. So, when it comes to the slogan under In The Image Clothing Company poodles, letting dogs stay natural, something can only stay how it was if we don't alter it. And there will always be alterations in dogs being domesticated animals. Us specializing in purebred standard poodles under In The Image Clothing Company poodles are already altered from their natural state of whatever dog they got taken from to create, if you will, right? Zero in on the breed of a poodle. That's already unnatural. That's already abusing the natural selection of wild dogs. But we'll do what we can without trying to be overly perfect, meaning we'll never be perfect, but it's not our goal to try to do every single thing we possibly could in every single instance, like only feeding our dogs raw, wild meat, or, things like this. That's what I'm saying is we're not trying to take things to the extremes. The focus and the goal is intentionality. Under In The Image Clothing Company and all four sides, this is the focus. This is the reason, is we only have this one life. Are we going to do all that we can to try to have a good life? Or are we going to haphazardly go through life through our opinions and get after others for doing things we don't like when it's unjust? What we're actually saying in times like saying hitting your dog is abusive to the dog when we're doing it for the health and safety of the dog. Dogs will get eaten by other dogs in the wild. Dogs will get nipped at or bit to the point that they bleed out in the wild from other dogs. You could say it's abusive to have your dog lay in the dirt because you want your dog to have an unnatural bed with artificial, unnatural, synthetic materials that it's made out of inside of a house, locked up, because you think it's safer there than a dog would be naturally in the wild. Dogs also just get eaten by predators in the wild. Dogs themselves are predators, but there's other predators that will eat dogs, or just other dog species that will eat a dog in the wild. Hitting a dog is not abuse if it's done intentionally in times and reasons of training for their own safety, because we've domesticated them and placed them into a place that has a lot of dangers hidden in plain sight to the dogs because they don't understand societal norms, if you will, the way human beings do. We have to train them. And you just have to have some context. Life has to always come with context because we're here. How did it happen? Context, okay? Dante laying in the dirt here is something a lot of people could call abuse. You don't have a nice, soft, fluffy bed for your dog and you force him to lay in the dirt out there while you're filming a video for your company? That is selfish, someone might say. That is abusive, someone might say. Well, what about every single dog that's out there naturally, that's not domesticated? They live on the earth. On the natural earth is where they lay. This is natural for the dog. The texture is natural for the dog. The immune system of a dog, for example, just like us human beings, have to work. Yes, it has to work to be strong. The immune system, like the body's ability to fight against illness, okay? It has to work to be strong. You have to come across things that are not so clean for your body to defend against things that are not so clean. When it comes to vaccines and injections, often what that is introducing a little bit of a virus or of a illness, if you will, in whatever way we could explain it, of like the proper wording of what it is, into the body, so the body can start to use its immune system to fight against these things, to develop antibodies and things within our bodies, or the dog's bodies, whatever animal's body it is, to be able to fight against these things. That's why we do these injections of, vaccines. Vaccines are vaccines where they are, if they're legally required, and we'll get into that where we do under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, if we do speak on those things further than this. But what I'm saying is, the dogs would naturally be coming up against any kind of potential threat, and they need to be able to fight against it or they will die. If there's nothing or no one else intervening like domesticated dogs under human beings' ownership. And so when we try to keep our dogs excessively clean, it's actually weakening their immune system. And our dogs can get sick easier. Our dogs can have health complications easier the more we try to keep our dogs clean in the ways we think that needs to happen as human beings. That's the same for our bodies as well, by the way. So there's a lot that comes with this. There's a lot of things that are happening that are abuse to dogs and always will be, stemming with owning dogs to begin with at all, okay? So, abusing dogs. It's something you will never rid, just like the evil is something you will never rid from the world. It's supposed to be evil. There is only good because there is evil. There is only light because there is dark. There is only warmth because there is cold. There is opposition in all things. And we discuss this in the gospel of Jesus Christ. There is truth to life before human beings ever got here, is when the dogs existed, if you will. Okay. So, abusing dogs. Here's a lot of context, and I love this. Date marked on the 15th of February, 2026. In the Image Clothing Company Poodles is at least going to be around for the life of me, Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. And we will be doing a lot. Where we do, if we do, how we do, under In the Image Clothing Company and all four sides. And a lot of it will involve dogs, and specifically purebred standard poodles, okay? So, there you go, okay? Some context. There's a lot more, by the way, that I could say here. Yes, just to be clear, this is just an introduction on what it means to take God's creation of a wild dog and domesticate it, okay? Through breeding, a lot is happening that could be called abuse. Yeah, a lot of dogs just get killed because breeders only want what they want out of a litter of puppies. And so any dogs that they don't want to keep, when a litter of puppies gets born, they'll just kill the dog and dispose of it however they choose to, and keep only the dogs they want. This is happening every day all over the planet where it is. And also, we need to realize societies are different across the entire planet. And where you live is entirely different than where other human beings live, depending on the part of the earth. And what you've been taught is entirely different than what other people have been taught on any other part of the planet, that it's different. It's a very common practice for a lot of cultures across the earth to eat dogs. So abusing dogs isn't even a question in their mind. Dogs aren't something you could even abuse. Dogs are just food to a lot of human beings. And that's not just primitive, barbaric, past historic things. That's in current modern day and will always be the case where it is. Okay, so just know there's context that has to come with life, and we don't get to decide, but Jesus Christ, God himself, who is the truth, gets to decide all. So there you go. Context, where it comes, where it is, it's got to be there. You've got to understand your role as a human being in the grand scheme of life, just as I do, and we're all equal human beings, and we are extremely insignificant in the grand scheme of existence, of God's truth. Yeah, and it was all there before us as well, anything that was. And so we don't really have a say in a lot of things at all that could possibly matter. So, abusing dogs. It's happening. It will continue to always. It comes through any kind of avenue it could possibly come through, anything you could call mistreatment, but we often pave our way to hell with our good intentions as human beings. And you might think you're doing all you can to treat your dog the best you can, and you might actually be causing a lot of permanent, irreversible damage to your dog through things that you just don't have an understanding of deep enough to know what it really means for a dog to be a dog. And I'm just as imperfect and human as anyone else, but, yeah. We need to remember the goal is natural. We need to remember God is in charge. We need to remember that we don't really have ownership over these animals. We can legally have a certificate of ownership, as I do for Dante here, but we're all God's creations. We're abusing ourselves and we're abusing each other as human beings in so many ways that we're unaware of. So a lot of it is awareness and intentionality over nitpicking things that will just always continue to happen where they will, because we're not going to rid the world of the evil that it is. It's supposed to be evil. Okay, so that's a good note to leave that on, to leave this on. And Dante, come. Good. Good boy. Okay. Thank you.